Welcome back to another lesson of the Logos and Letters. My name is Liam, and just clarifying some stuff from the last lesson before we finish off this large paragraph here and move on. With this first part, remember how he was, really highlighting the fact that we name things according to the accidents, and we can name things according to substances, but he really wants us to distinguish between what's a quantity and what's just another accident. So let me just highlight some of these that he brings up. So he brings up action here. He brings up color, all right, quality, tolukon, he praxis. What else he's got? He's got time, that's a quantity. He's got hey kinesis, which is again like movement, action. Does he have anything else here? He brings up praxis, action again. One more. I'm sure there's one more. There's white again, color. I feel like there's heaps in this part. I feel like there's absolutely heaps. He brings up accidents again here. Okay, we'll leave it there. So as you can see, he's bringing up all these different kinds of accidents inside the chapter on quantities. Why? Because quantities are often used to describe other accidents, which is a strange thing to think, but he gives us plenty of examples. So, how large is that white thing there? Okay, so that sail there. Okay, and we give an answer based on quantity back to it. We're not giving a quantity. How large is the whiteness? Okay, that's strange. That's a mind-breaking sort of thing. We're just saying how large the sail is, the substance. Okay, that's what they really meant when they said that. And that's his example. Okay, so if you've got this big canvas spread out, maybe you are a sail maker, okay, and it's in your workshop, and you ask your apprentice or someone you're working with, how big is this? Okay, because it's got to fit. It's got to be. It can't be undersized. It can't be oversized. How big is this? And maybe there's heaps of things before you, and your apprentice says, what? How big is what? And you say the white thing here, and you've named it by its quality, but still, you're given a quantity in return, and there's three things that's been mixed up there, right? We've spoken about substance, because you're measuring the quantity, the dimensions of a sail. You've mentioned the quality of it, the color, and you're getting a quantity as an answer. So in simple everyday sort of conversations, you can see how so much is mixed up in our language and our thought, and we can easily discern what is meant by others, but if precision is ever needed, this lesson is a good way of training for that. So kai praxis makra, so some particular action, okay, activity. Praxis can mean a lot, but for now let's just imagine it meant sailing. Okay, how long did it take this ship to sail to Trafalgar, for example? All right, let's imagine it takes 2 months. 2 months. All right, we know that 2 months is referring to a quantity of time, and we can measure that. Okay, maybe it's 31 days plus 30 days, okay, 61 times 24 hours, all right, and that multiplied by 60 minutes, so on and so forth. But that's how long it took, and we're using a quantity to describe an action. How large was the action? How great was the action? And then people form a judgment based on that. So we can see how, again, quantity plays a role in even describing the size. I know that sounds strange, but the size or length of a action. Okay, and here he even says it. He says "Kai praxis makra," like a long action. Toigeton chronon polunanai, much time, right? Being much time. Polun chronon, all right. Kai kinesis, like a movement, all right, a great movement. great movement. Like what's an example of a great? I'm thinking of gymnastics, all right, or even throwing an object, a javelin. Here's a good one. Like, there'd be plenty of like large movements of the body involved with this. You know, someone might leap from their horse and attack an enemy, or leap from a rock, or leap onto shields. You get the picture, okay? It's a large movement of the body, and we can have small movements of the body. And large and small, let's remember, are referring in some way to a quantity, right? Like a movement across space, or the amount of time it takes to do it, or the total amount of the body that is involved with this particular movement. So we can see quantities are attached to all sorts of questions with actions and movements. Okay, if you're wondering what this artwork is, it is the Anabasis. It's based on the Anabasis. The Greeks fighting against the Neo-Babylonian Empire, I think, with Cyrus the Younger, but that's another story. So we continue on. So according to each of these, right, a quantity is given back in return. So actions, even the size of the colored object, the amount of time that it takes for a movement, or how great a part of the body is involved in the movement, things like this. And now on I think we finished around here. All right, so in this way we render back a quantity in reply. Kai to lukon poson ti apodidus de epiphanai o horiai. All right, so this little clause here is just sort of articulating the point that we're making right now. So the white object, how great it is. Someone can someone gives a quantity back to the surface, all right, in reply to the surface area. So if we go back to that, here, a quantity it's referring to the surface size. Okay, it's not referring to like the substance itself. Okay, we're not sort of trying to quantify the substance in any way. It's really referred to the surface. We can speak about volume, of course, three-dimensional objects, and so on and so forth. And yeah, you can see how closely related quantity is to so much that we do. Engineers and mathematicians and all sorts who are listening to this lesson know this all too well. And it might seem a little bit obvious. However, it's our perspective which makes it unique and subtle. We're looking at this from a perspective of logic, and the 10 categories, which this book is named after, categoriae, and trying to identify how closely linked things are. But they're still separate. They're distinct. Like they are different compartments of the reality that we exist in. We shouldn't try to muddle them up. All right, they just come in packages sometimes as we speak. Jose garan he epifania e tosuton kai tolukon fesain an ainai. Right, so a bit of a tricky one to translate. So again, you've seen the color come back up. So Jose garan he epifania. So if you're speaking about some surface, maybe this sail right here, you can say it's like it's been like how large is this white surface? How large is this surface? You might say in reply, the white thing here is I don't know, 4 square meters, 5 square meters, 6 square meters, whatever it is, and the quality is being sort of identified by a quantity. All right, the quale in Latin is being described with a quantitas, a quantity. All right, so we'll move on from that point. I think we understand it. Hostemona curios kai kathauta posa legetai ta airemena. So for quantity alone, it is most unique for it to be said as the aforementioned. And what does he mean? He means that this part. He means all the way back here. Curios te posa tauta mona legetai ta airemena ta the alla panta kata simbebekos. So all these other accidents, such as an action, a movement, qualities, and how long it, even a habit has been going on for, are separate, and quantity is all these other things that we learn here. Parts, order, position, these things are unique to quantity. They have nothing to do, they don't transfer over to the other accidents that are associated with them. We don't start talking about the parts, the white parts of a sail. We don't start talking about the order inside the white color. Okay, so you can say there is this part of the sail, that part of the sail. You're talking about its substance, but you're not talking about it as having as the actual, the whiteness itself, or the yellowness or the brownness or whatever color the sail is. You're not talking about that color as having parts, order, position. All right, that's different. That's in its own category. That's something separate. Keep the categories distinguished, and don't try to apply rules to it, apply thinking to it that doesn't belong to it. It's non-applicable. All right. Only to the category of quantity do we start speaking about continuous, discrete, order, parts in relation to one another, posterior and prior, okay, and so on and so forth. I think there's a couple other things, but we'll leave it there. And sort of a difficult lesson to make super interesting to everybody out there, but it is quite simply a necessary lesson. This part in particular is quite good. I like this one. He goes, if someone's speaking about how long an action is, toi chrono horiai eniao sian, right? So like you might say the time it took was a year, a hutopos apodidus, like, or something of this sort. So it took a year, which is like perfect. Like say this ship went on a 1 year circumnavigation, picking up all these rare items across the planet for sale when it returns, and making a fortune in the process, and it took a year. Like an action is being described with a quantity, right? But the quantity is not being described by the action, right? You don't say, we don't really go like how long. No, because then you're asking about a quantity. We don't say the year took a circumnavigation, right? That's strange, but we say the circumnavigation took a year. So the moral of that story is the absolute utility of using the category of quantities to assist us in understanding so much that goes on in the world and so much that happens, and considering it in that way. So there's nothing wrong with using all these different accidents and categories in the same few sentences in the same conversations. All that we need to do as logicians is know how to instinctually separate them, okay? How to identify what is really being spoken about, what is really being asked, and knowing the difference between them. So if we can do that, perfect. I'm sure the author of this book would be extremely proud of us for doing so. So I'll leave it there. I think we get the picture by now. And as always, si semper fortis in opere tuo. I'll see you next time.